sociopathic behavior, torture for the love of the game, absolutely no remorse for his actions. These are all things that describe the one character who I believe is one of the greatest villains in TV history, Ramsay Bolton. So as some of you might know from my Game of Thrones videos, I really love Ramsay. As a character. There are some types of characters that can just get under your skin, all while making it seem like they're not even putting effort into doing it. And oh boy, is he not different? He's one of those characters who can make you uncomfortable just by being in the room, because you never really know what he's going to do next. So without further introductions, let's begin our special video on Ramsay Bolton. His story. So Ramsay is introduced as the bastard son of Roose Bolton, and that already tells you a lot. Because in Game of Thrones, being a bastard is not just a family issue, it is basically society looking at you like you're a lower life form, basically a subhuman. And that is important because from the beginning, Ramsay is not someone who is simply chilling inside the family legacy, he's trying to earn his place inside it. Season 2. The Ghost Behind Winterfell. Now, think about it like a Pokemon evolution. In the second season, Ramsay is still in his early base form. He's like a shadow moving behind the chaos, showing glimpses of his potential, but not really fully there yet. Basically, after Theon takes Winterfell, Roose Bolton sends Ramsay to retake the castle in the name of Robb Stark. Theon tries to hold it, but his own men betray him, knock him out, and hand him over. And this is where Ramsay's story basically begins. Because instead of just restoring order like a normal human being, Ramsay sucks Winterfell, flays the Ironborn, and takes Theon prisoner. Yeah, Theon isn't going to have a good time. So even before we properly meet Ramsay, the show is already telling us one thing. Something very wrong is moving in the north. Season 3. The Birth of Reek. Now, Season 3 is basically where Ramsay starts becoming Ramsay. At first, he doesn't even reveal himself properly. He pretends to be a servant boy helping Theon escape, almost tricking Theon into thinking he has found his guardian angel, and that is how his masterclass begins. Ramsay doesn't just torture Theon physically, he plays with hope first. He gives Theon the idea that he might actually escape, he gives him a horse, he tells him where to go, he even kills some of the men chasing him, making Theon believe he has found an ally, and then, after all of that, he leads him right back to the torture chamber. That is the moment where Ramsay teases what we can expect from him, because he understands that pain is not the only weapon. Hope is a weapon too, and he uses it like it's his magnum opus. This is also the season where he starts destroying Theon's identity piece by piece. I mean, maybe not only his identity, maybe other parts as well. Until eventually, Theon is no longer Theon. He becomes Reek, and that name is not just an insult, it is Ramsay's masterpiece, because anyone can hurt a person, but not anyone can make them lose themselves completely. Season 4. Becoming a Bolton. By season 4, Ramsay is no longer hiding anything, he is embracing being a lunatic, and what makes this season important is that we finally start seeing Ramsay's cruelty outside of the torture chamber. He is not just experimenting on Theon anymore, he is applying the same logic to everyone around him, which we basically see in his first scene of the season, where he, his girlfriend Miranda, and his obedient servant Rick are hunting a girl in the woods, chasing her with dogs, and simply enjoying the thrill of the hunt. For most people, cruelty is a means to an end. For Ramsay, it's the activity. He simply does it because of his love for the game. But the most important part of season 4 is not him running around the woods like a medieval serial killer, it is still Rick, because Rick is no longer just a victim, he is now proof of concept. When Roose sees what Ramsay has done to Theon, he is not impressed at first. In fact, he is quite angry, because Theon was supposed to be valuable. He was a political hostage, a bargaining chip, a way to deal with the Ironborn, and Ramsay basically looked at that expensive asset and said, "What if I add another hound to my collection?" But then Ramsay demonstrates what Rick has become. He lets him shape him with a razor, and that scene tells Roose everything, because if a man can hold a blade to your throat and still be too broken to betray you, then Ramsay didn't just torture him, he built obedience into him. That is the disturbing genius of Rick. Ramsay didn't create loyalty, he created distortion, and that becomes even clearer when Yara comes to rescue Theon. This should be the moment where Theon gets saved. His sister is there, the door is open, the chance is right in front of him, but he refuses to leave. Not because Ramsay is physically holding him back in that exact second, but because Ramsay is already inside his head. The cage is open, but Theon is still locked in, and that is way scarier than just ooh, Ramsay hurt him. Because by this point, Ramsay has made Theon afraid of freedom itself. Then comes the infiltration of Maud Callin, and this is where Ramsay proves to his father that Rick is not just some broken toy he keeps around for entertainment, he is useful. Ramsay sends Rick to the Ironborn, makes him act as Theon Greyjoy, and uses him to convince them to surrender with the promise of safe passage. And of course, because this is Ramsay, safe passage apparently means safe passage to the afterlife, as the Ironborn get flayed alive after surrendering. Maud Callin falls, and after this achievement, Ramsay finally gets what he has been chasing since the beginning. Roose legitimizes him, Ramsay Snow becomes Ramsay Bolton, and that is the point of no return. This is not just Ramsay being evil for the sake of being evil, this is Ramsay learning that his cruelty can get results. It can break people, it can win battles, it can impress his father, it can earn him a name. Season 4 is basically the season where Ramsay realizes that being a monster is not just something he enjoys, it is the thing that brings him the greatest results. And he doesn't plan on stopping, because by the end of the season, he and Roose are on their way to Winterfell. Season 5, Shoot for the Stars. Now in Season 5, Ramsay gets promoted from the Dreadfort basement to one of the most important locations in the whole series, Winterfell. And that's where things get interesting, because up until this point, Ramsay's cruelty has mostly been contained in his own little nightmare bubble. The torture chamber, the kennels, the woods, the places where he can play his little games without pretending to be anyone else. But now, Roose needs him to be more than a monster. He needs him to be useful, because the Boltons are in a very awkward position. Yes, they help destroy the Starks. Yes, they have Winterfell. Yes, they have power. But the North is not exactly the trusting and forgiving type. And what doesn't help is that the Lannisters are weaker after Tywin's death, meaning less support for the Boltons. The northern houses still remember what happened to the Starks, and Roose understands that fear can win you a castle, but it cannot always keep it warm. You need legitimacy. You need a story people can at least pretend to believe. And that story becomes Sansa Stark. By marrying Sansa, Ramsay doesn't just get a wife. The Boltons get a Stark-shaped stamp of approval. On paper, it makes the rule look cleaner, more acceptable, less like they stole Winterfell through betrayal and blood. Which is exactly what happened, by the way, if you have somehow forgotten. But as we know, the winner writes history. And at first, Ramsay understands that. When Sansa arrives, he doesn't immediately show her the full lunatic behind the smile. He's polite, controlled, almost gentle, and somehow that makes him even worse, because with Ramsay, the calm moments never feel peaceful, and slowly, Winterfell stops feeling like a castle and starts feeling like Ramsay's stage. He doesn't just want Sansa trapped there, he wants her surrounded by proof of what he can do. And that is where Rick becomes important again, because Rick is not just tune anymore, he's evidence, a before and after picture of what happens when Ramsay decides he wants to play with you. So when Ramsay puts Rick near Sansa, it is not random cruelty, it is display. He is showing her without ever needing to explain it. This is simply what he does to people. And then comes the wedding. I am not going to go into detail about the scene, but for Ramsay's story, the important part is that this is where the mask fully drops. During his controlled and gentle moments, he wasn't becoming softer. He was just holding everything back, waiting for the moment where letting it out would hurt the most. And after that, Sansa's time in Winterfell becomes less about politics and more about survival. There is still a small chance of hope with the candle in the broken tower, but even that hope gets poisoned, because Tion is still trapped inside the Rick identity. Sansa asks him for help, and instead of saving her, he gives the plan to Ramsay. Not because Tion is evil, but because Ramsay has broken him so badly that obedience feels safer than freedom. And Ramsay responds exactly how you would expect. The woman who tried to help Sansa is punished, and Sansa is forced to see the result. Because Ramsay doesn't just punish people to remove problems. That would be boring. He punishes people to decorate the room with a message. But Season 5 is not only about Ramsay as an abuser. It also shows that he is dangerous outside of his usual torture style. Ramsay is not a one-trick pony. He has the full package. When Stannis marches towards Winterfell, Roose wants to be cautious and let the weather weaken him. Ramsay, of course, suggests the most Ramsay plan possible. Give me 20 men and let me cause problems. And somehow it works. He infiltrates Stannis' camp, burns supplies, kills horses, and weakens the army before the real battle even starts. So by this point, Ramsay is becoming more than just Roose Bolton's unstable basement experiment. He's a psychological weapon, a political liability, a weirdly enough, military asset. Basically, a jack of all trades. But as we know, everything comes to an end at a certain point. Because this season also gives us the first real crack in his control. While Ramsay is out helping destroy Stannis, Sansa and Tion finally escape. Tion kills Miranda, and he and Sansa escape Winterfell, which means Ramsay loses the two people who represented his power most clearly. Sansa, the political prize that gave him legitimacy, and Rick, the masterpiece that proved his cruelty worked. So Season 5 is technically bittersweet for Ramsay. He gains Winterfell, he proves himself to Roose, he helps defeat Stannis, but underneath all of that, the story gives us the first real warning sign. Ramsay can gain power, Ramsay can use fear, Ramsay can turn cruelty into results, but he cannot control everything forever. And once Ramsay starts losing control, Season 6 becomes inevitable. Season 6, The Last Dance. Season 6 is basically what happens when pure insanity and uncontrollable ambition have a love child. Until now, Ramsay has always had something above him, his father, the Bolton name, the need to prove himself. Even when he was doing the most insane things possible, there was still technically a structure around him, there was still someone who could look at him and go, Ramsay, maybe don't turn every problem into a deranged servant or straight up human furniture. But in Season 6, that leash gets cut, and somehow Ramsay suddenly becomes even more deranged. Up to now, he was already mentally ill. The terrifying part is that now there is no filter between his impulses and actual power. Before this, Ramsay was a weapon Roose could point at people. A disgusting weapon, sure, but still a weapon. In Season 6, the weapon starts giving orders, and that is where everything begins falling apart. Because Ramsay can win fear, he can win pain, he can win obedience, but he cannot build anything stable, because the only language he truly speaks is domination. And at the start of the season, Sansa and Tion have escaped, and Miranda is dead.
Shall I have a grave dug for her, my lord?
This is good meat. Feed it to the hounds.
And for Ramsay, this is not just a personal loss, it is an insult. Sansa was supposed to be his claim, his trophy, his political upgrade. Theon was supposed to be his masterpiece, the living proof that Ramsay could take a person and hold them out. And now, both are gone, so when his father looks at him, you can almost feel the disappointment, because Ramsay is no longer just dangerous, he is becoming expensive. He lost Sansa, he lost Theon, and with Woda giving birth to a trueborn son, Ramsay suddenly realizes something horrifying. After everything he did to become Ramsay Bolton, he can still be replaced by a baby whose greatest achievement is existing legally. And Ramsay cannot survive that. Not emotionally. Not after everything he did for that name. Not with that ego. So he does the most Ramsay thing possible. He decides to remove the line of succession. He kills his father. He leads his stepmother and newborn baby brother into the kennels and lets the dog devour them. Everyone dies. And with that, Ramsay finally gets what he always wanted. No more snow. No more waiting for approval. No more father looking over his shoulder. He is the Bolton in Winterfell now. Basically, Ramsay's moving castle. Except instead of magic, it runs on premium dog food, blood, and every possible mental illness known to mankind. But the problem with Ramsay becoming the main Bolton is that now he actually has to defend what he stole, and this is where Rickon returns to the story. Because soon after Ramsay takes control of Winterfell, Small John Number arrives and gives him exactly the kind of present Ramsay would put on his Christmas wish list, a hostage with emotional value, Rickon Stark. And Ramsay immediately understands what this means. Rickon is not just a prisoner, he is proper bait. He is leverage against Sansa. He is a way to drag Jon Snow into a fight, and before that, Osha also tries to kill Ramsay by getting close to him and reaching for a knife. But Ramsay apparently unlocks future sight like he Shanks from One Piece and sees it coming. So he kills her before the plan even properly starts, which is important because it reminds us that Ramsay is not just some screaming lunatic. He's insane, but he is not stupid, which honestly is the worst type of insane. This whole time, Ramsay understands what is happening around him. He understands the board. He just decides that this is the way he's going to play it. So with Rickon in his hands, Ramsay sends Jon a letter. Nothing but sweet words coming from our favorite torturer. And the letter works, because Ramsay knows exactly what he is doing. He is pulling the emotional strings of everyone involved, waiting for the moment one of those strings finally snaps. And at first, Jon is against the idea of fighting. He doesn't want another war. But Ramsay gives him a reason he cannot ignore. Sansa, Rickon, the North, the threat of what happens if Jon does nothing. That is Ramsay's real talent. He doesn't just attack people, he makes it impossible not to react. And once they react, he is more than able to control the shape of the fight. And that brings us to the Battle of the Bastards. Before the battle even begins, Jon offers him a one-on-one fight, and Ramsay refuses, which might be the most sane thing he does all season. Because say what you want about Ramsay, but even he knows he can beat Jon in a proper fight. So instead, he fights the way he actually knows how to fight. Not with honor, not with fairness, with pressure, with human bait, with emotions turned into a weapon. At the stare down between the two armies, Ramsay does the unthinkable. He releases Rickon and tells him to run towards Jon. Then, a few seconds later, he starts firing arrows. And the point is not just to kill Rickon. The point is to make Jon lose every bit of temper he has and react irrationally. Ramsay knows Jon will charge. He knows Jon will try to save him. He knows that if he can break Jon's discipline before the armies even clash, the battle starts on Ramsay's terms. And it works. Rickon dies right in front of Jon. Jon charges and everything collapses. After a few close calls, a lot of fighting, and people dropping left and right, Ramsay's army starts controlling everything, lays around Jon's forces, crush them against the corpse pile, and turn the battlefield into one giant meat grinder. For a moment, it looks like Ramsay has actually done it. He has risen from the dirt against all odds and became one of the most dangerous people alive, crushing legacy names and now eradicating every last bit of hope the North has. And he does it while being completely hated, completely feared, and with absolutely no one rooting for him. Because fear, positioning, and panic can carry you very far. The problem is they cannot carry you forever. Because Ramsay's whole worldview depends on one idea. People get predictable when they are afraid. And most of the time, he is completely right. Theon was predictable, the Ironborn were predictable, Jon was predictable, but Sansa is the piece Ramsay misreads. He thinks he knows her because he hurt her. He thinks hurting someone means owning their mind forever. But Sansa doesn't come back as a victim. She comes back as the variable he failed to calculate. The Knights of the Vale arrive, and suddenly Ramsay's clean little nightmare trap turns into his own casket. His army breaks, his advantage disappears, and the man who spent the entire battle forcing other people into panic finally feels it himself. He runs back to Winterfell, back behind walls, back behind gates, back to anything that can create distance between him and the consequences, hiding inside the home of the people he made suffer through hell. But this time, he is the price of the hunt. Woon breaks through the gate, and that illusion dies too. Ramsay kills him with an arrow, because of course he has to add one more terrible thing to the list. But Jon has reached him, now enraged more than ever. And now Ramsay has to face the one thing he avoided earlier, a direct fight. No army, no dogs, no psychological game, just him, Jon, and the worst matchmaking decision of his life. He tries to use arrows, Jon picks up a shield, blocks the shots, gets closer, and beats him into the ground, hit after hit. Every hit avenging a person Ramsay twisted beyond repair. But even in the face of Jon, and potentially dead, Ramsay still smiles, enjoying it even when he is the one receiving the brutality. But Jon stops. because this was never really Jon's ending to take. Later, Ramsay is locked in the kennels, wounded, defeated, and still trying to act like words can save him. He tells Sansa that she will never be rid of him, that he is a part of her now, and that is Ramsay's final move. Even with nothing left, he still tries to turn trauma into ownership, but this time, it doesn't work. His army is gone, his house is gone, his power is gone. And finally, Ramsay Bolton is killed by his own hounds. With Ramsay dead, the Starks retake Winterfell, House Bolton is destroyed, and the North finally gets to breathe again. But even with the North free and the evil gone, Ramsay did so much damage that it can easily be labeled as irreversible. Basically, if we had to sum up Ramsay's story in one quote, it would probably be, if the price of your peace is being the villain, wear the role like a crown. How Ramsay outgrew his father character. Now, when I say father character, I'm obviously not talking about Roose Bolton. I'm talking about the character that came before Ramsay in this specific deranged villain archetype. And for this talking point, that character is Joffrey. The prototype, the first version, and for many people still the worst. Joffrey had this dislikable aura about him, from his smugness, his total disregard for human and animal life,
Killed a few puppies today?
to his torturous and malicious intentions. He didn't feel remorse while doing horrific stuff that endangered or straight up took other people's lives. He just enjoyed it. And while some characters, like Sandor Clegane for example, I strongly believe at least feel despair about the things they have done and the crimes they have committed, Joffrey either didn't hit that point yet or he just straight up didn't have one. He was the character others feared, not because of his sword skills, not because of his brains, but because of his unpredictability and cold-heartedness. And mostly, the simple fact that he was willing to do anything to satisfy his own desires, or in many cases relieve his boredom. But while Joffrey from the beginning of season 1 until his final days was one of the most deranged characters in the show, he didn't really evolve throughout it, or at least he didn't evolve in the way he should have. He started off as the spoiled, bratty rich prince, and he died off as the spoiled, bratty rich king. At first, when I was watching the show, Joffrey felt like something I hadn't experienced before. He was cocky, assertive, and straight up deranged, and to be honest, he was really interesting. But as we followed him throughout the seasons, he became predictable. Most of the time, he even resorted to his previous craziness, like when there was a meeting of the Smoke Council in King's Landing, and after discovering the news that Robb had died, his first thought was to serve Robb's head to Sansa at dinner, which was repetitive in a way. It wasn't anything new that we hadn't seen before, it just felt like he was spinning in circles, and after a certain point, he didn't grow anymore. But Ramsay never really stopped growing. He was growing the entire time, and the biggest advantage Ramsay had over Joffrey was the unpredictability factor. Joffrey, at first, was completely unpredictable, but because he stopped growing, with time he became predictable. Ramsay was completely unpredictable from his first scene to his last. His ending. And this brings us to Ramsay's ending, because his death is one of those rare villain deaths that feels rewarding for both the good and the bad side of the viewer. On the good side, it feels like justice. This is a man who broke Tion, tortured people for sport, abused everyone around him, killed his own family to secure power, and treated human suffering like it was his favorite hobby. So when he finally loses, it feels right. It feels like the story is finally correcting something that should have been corrected a long time ago. But then there is also the darker side of it. Ramsay's ending doesn't just feel satisfying because he's defeated, it feels satisfying because he suffers, and that is the uncomfortable part, because Ramsay doesn't just make you want justice, he makes you want revenge, because the show pushes Ramsay so far under your skin, makes him so disgusting, so cruel, and so impossible to forgive, that by the time he finally gets punished, the viewer doesn't really ask for mercy. You're not sitting there like, okay, this might be too much. No, you're sitting there like, yeah, Jon, hit him again, one more. And that is exactly the feeling I'm talking about. Because when the audience is happy to see you punished in a more than gruesome way, not just beaten, not just removed from power, but properly punished, that means you got under their skin. And Ramsay didn't do that once, he did that over and over again. Every time you thought that he had reached the lowest possible point, he somehow found a basement under the basement, like it's the Binding of Isaac, and you're just going down and down each floor. He tricks Tion into thinking he escaped. Well, how about a couple of torture sessions for good measure? Rick starts acting naughty. Well, how about we make him watch? You know what scene I'm talking about. I still won't go into detail about it. Sansa escapes and tries to seek help. Well, fortunately, Ramsay holds Rickon captive. Sansa and Jon actually mean to fight back. Woohoo! Catch the kid with Rickon! Let's see if he can outrun my arrows! And that is the thing with Ramsay. Almost everything he does on screen exceeds what he did before. There is always another line, always another punishment, another psychological game, another moment where you think, bro, surely this is the limit. But no, it is never the limit. So by the time Sansa walks away and lets his own hounds finish him, it doesn't feel random. It feels poetic. Ramsay spent the entire show turning cruelty into a weapon, and in the end, that same cruelty is turned back on him. He created a world where mercy doesn't exist, and then he died inside of it. That is why his ending is so effective. It rewards the good side of the viewer, because justice is served, but it also rewards the bad side of the viewer, because revenge feels good. And if a villain can make you enjoy something that dark, then congratulations. He didn't just play the role, he perfected it.